Captain Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, watching the stars bend and twist as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The blue and green world of Theta 7 grew larger on the main screen, its 3 moons creating a beautiful dance around the planet. This was his favorite part of exploration missions, seeing new worlds for the first time. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Lieutenant Amy Parker said as she joined him at the observation window. She was the ship's xenobiologist, a young woman with bright eyes who loved meeting new alien species. Her enthusiasm reminded Jake why he had chosen exploration over military service. "Sure is," Jake replied, adjusting his uniform. "Hard to believe the millions have been farming here for over 3,000 years. Their agricultural techniques might help feed half the galaxy." Commander Ben Sullivan walked up to them, holding a datapad. The former military officer had scars on his hands from his service days, but he had chosen peace over war, just like Jake. "The millions are expecting us in 2 hours, our ambassador." "Yaluchim is excited to meet humans for the first time." Jake nodded. Humans had been part of the Andromeda Trade Confederation for only 50 years, but they had quickly earned a reputation as peacemakers. Other species found it strange that beings from a Class 12 death world could be so gentle and caring. Earth was a nightmare planet to most aliens, gravity that could crush smaller species. Whether that changed without warning, and predators that could kill with their bare hands. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "we're getting a transmission from the Zalani ship Shadowblade. Ambassador Kethvar wants to speak with you." Jake straightened. "The Zalani were proud warriors who respected strength above all else. Their ships were fast and deadly, painted in dark colors that made them look like weapons of war." "Ambassador." Kethvar had been assigned to observe this first contact mission. The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of the Zalani vessel. Ambassador Kethvar stood in the center, his reptilian features sharp and intelligent. His scales were dark green with gold markings that showed his high rank. Behind him, Zalani warriors in armor watched the human ship with curious eyes. "Captain Martinez," Kethvar said, his voice deep and formal. "I hope your mission goes well today. The millions are good people, gentle farmers who have never known war." "Thank you, Ambassador," Jake replied. "We're looking forward to meeting them. I understand they have some of the best agricultural technology in this sector." Kethvar's eyes narrowed slightly. "Captain, may I speak freely?" "Of course. Your species continues to puzzle us. We have read your history, the wars, the violence, the countless conflicts on your death world. Yet here you are, traveling between stars to help others grow food." The Zalani tilted his head. "Why do you show such mercy to species that could never survive on your world?" Jake thought for a moment. It was a question many aliens asked. "Because we know what it's like to struggle. Earth taught us that survival is hard, but it also taught us that helping each other makes us all stronger." "Interesting," Kethvar said. "But remember, Captain, not all species share your view of mercy. Some see kindness as weakness. Be careful." The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at the empty screen. Amy looked troubled. "What do you think he meant by that?" Ben shrugged. "The Zalani are warriors. They see threats everywhere. But he's not wrong. We should always be ready." An hour later, the UES horizon entered orbit around Theta 7. The planet was covered in vast green fields that stretched from pole to pole. Cities were small and scattered, connected by thin lines of transportation routes. It looked peaceful and perfect. Scanning the surface, Amy reported from her science station. "Population centers are small, maybe 50,000 beings each. No military installations, no weapons signatures, just farms and small towns." "Life signs?" Jake asked. "Normal for millions. About 12 million beings across the planet." "Wait," Amy frowned at her readings. "That's strange. What is it?" "The life signs are different somehow. I'm picking up the right number of millions, but there's something else mixed in. Very faint. Almost like a second nervous system overlaying the first." Ben moved to look at her console. "Could be equipment interference. These agricultural worlds use a lot of biotech." Amy shook her head. "No, this is biological. I've never seen anything like it." Jake made a decision. "Take us down to the capital city. Let's meet with Ambassador Yilakim and see what's going on." The shuttle bay was busy as the crew prepared for first contact. Jake, Amy and Ben would go down with a small diplomatic team. The rest of the crew would monitor from orbit. This was standard procedure for meeting new species. The shuttle broke through the atmosphere and flew over endless green fields. Millions worked the land with their 6 arms, moving in slow, careful patterns. They were tall and thin, with pale skin and large eyes adapted for their planet's dim sun. They looked up at the human shuttle with curiosity but no fear. The capital city was beautiful in its simplicity. Low buildings covered in growing plants, streets that curved like rivers, and gardens everywhere. The millions had built their city to work with nature, not against it. Ambassador Yelakem met them at the landing pad. She was older than most millions they had seen, with silver markings on her pale skin. Her smile was warm and welcoming. "Humans," she said in accented but clear English, "we are so happy to meet you. Your reputation for kindness has spread even to our quiet world." Jake stepped forward and bowed slightly, a gesture of respect the millions appreciated. "Ambassador Yelakem, it's an honor to be here. Your world is beautiful. Thank you. Come, let me show you our city. We have prepared a feast to celebrate this first meeting." As they walked through the streets, Amy noticed something odd. The millions they passed all smiled and waved, but their movements seemed slightly off. They moved a little too slowly, as if thinking about each step. Their large eyes had a distant look, like they were listening to something far away. "Ambassador Amy said carefully, "We noticed some unusual biological readings from orbit. Is everything well with your people?" Yelakem's smile never wavered, but something flickered in her eyes. "Everything is perfect. We are happier than we have ever been. Our new friends have shown us such wonderful things." "New friends?" Ben asked, his military instincts making him alert. "Oh, yes," Yelakem said, her voice dreamy. "They came from the stars just like you. They're inside us now, helping us think better thoughts. Soon, all the galaxy will have friends like ours." Jake felt ice in his stomach. Amy grabbed his arm, her face pale with understanding. Ben's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon. "Ambassador," Jake said slowly, "what kind of friends are inside you?" Yelakem turned to face them, and for a moment, her eyes cleared. Terror filled her face as she whispered, "Help us. Please, they're in our minds. We can't stop them. They're going to use us to spread to other worlds." "They're going to." Her eyes went distant again, and the pleasant smile returned. "I'm sorry. What were we talking about?" "Come, the feast is ready. You must be tired from your long journey." Around them, hundreds of millions stopped what they were doing and turned to look at the humans. Their smiles were all exactly the same. Their eyes all had the same distant, hungry look. Jake realized with growing horror that they were not looking at the humans as friends. They were looking at them as the next species to be infected. Gentle millions had become something else entirely, and that something wanted to spread to every world in the galaxy. The age of human mercy was about to face its greatest test. 3 months had passed since the discovery on Theta 7, and the infection was spreading faster than anyone had imagined. Dr. Lisa Chen stood in her laboratory aboard the research station, New Geneva, staring at the latest reports with tired eyes. 12 worlds were now confirmed infected. More cases appearing every day. She rubbed her temples and looked at the microscopic images on her screen. The parasites were unlike anything science had ever seen. They looked like tiny silver threads that wrapped around brain tissue, growing stronger with each passing day. What made them truly terrifying was how they worked. "The infected don't just lose control," she said to her assistant, Dr. Mark Williams. "The parasites let them keep their memories, their personalities, their ability to think. But they add new thoughts, new desires. The hosts know what's happening to them, but they can't stop it." Mark nodded grimly. He had been studying the brain, scans of infected millions for weeks. It's like having a passenger in your head that slowly takes over the controls. The worst part is that the hosts stay aware the whole time. They're screaming inside their own minds. Lisa turned away from the screen. She had not slept properly in days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of the infected beings they had tried to save. The millions who begged for help, even as they tried to infect the rescue teams. The children whose eyes held such terror and confusion. Captain Carlos Rodriguez walked into the lab. His medical uniform clean, but his face showing the strain of the past months. He commanded the hospital ship U.S. Sanctuary, which had become the main vessel for evacuating uninfected civilians from threatened worlds. "Dr. Chen," he said, "we need to talk about the latest evacuation from Kepler Station." Lisa looked up. Kepler Station was a trading post that served 5 different species. If the infection had reached there, it meant the parasites were moving through the main trade routes. "How bad is it?" she asked. Carlos sat down heavily in a chair. "We saved about 3,000 beings, but the infected ones, they're getting smarter. They used children as bait, knowing we couldn't leave kids behind. When our rescue teams got close, the infected adults attacked. Did any of our people get hurt? 2 of my medics were exposed. We have them in quarantine, but you know how this works. If they're infected, they'll start showing symptoms in a few days." Lisa felt sick. Every rescue mission was becoming a trap. The parasites were learning human behavior, using their compassion against them. They knew humans would risk everything to save innocent lives, especially children. Mark pulled up a new file on his computer. "Doctor, you need to see this. Parasites from the latest samples are different from the ones we found on Theta 7. Different how? They're evolving, getting better at hiding inside their hosts. The new ones can stay dormant for weeks before activating. We might not be able to detect infected beings until it's too late." The implications hit Lisa like a physical blow. If the parasites could hide for weeks, they could spread through the entire galaxy before anyone knew they were infected. Trade, ships, diplomatic missions, refugee evacuations. Any contact between worlds could spread the infection. Her computer chimed with an urgent message. It was from Admiral Susan Brooks, commander of the human fleet. Lisa opened the transmission and saw the Admiral's stern face on the screen. "Dr. Chen," Admiral Brooks said, "I need your assessment of the situation. The Galactic Council is meeting an emergency session. They're talking about extreme measures." Lisa activated the communication link. "Admiral, we're making progress on understanding the parasites, but we haven't found a cure yet. The infection is spreading faster than we can contain it. How much time do we have? At the current rate of spread, the infection could reach the core worlds within 6 months. Once it gets there," Lisa didn't finish the sentence. Everyone knew what would happen if the parasites reached the heavily populated center of the galaxy. Admiral Brooks nodded grimly. "The Council is considering the Scorched Sky Protocol." Lisa felt her blood turn cold. The Scorched Sky Protocol was the galaxy's last resort option, the complete destruction of infected worlds to prevent the spread of dangerous diseases or hostile species. It had never been used before, Admiral. There are millions of beings on those worlds. Most of them are still uninfected. We can't just kill them all. The Council thinks it's the only way to stop the spread. They want us to execute the protocol within the week. I need more time. I'm close to understanding how these parasites work. Maybe I can find a way to remove them without killing the hosts." Admiral Brooks was quiet for a moment. "I'll try to buy you more time, but the Council is scared. Some species are already talking about closing their borders, cutting off all trade and communication. If this infection reaches their home, EWORLDS... The transmission ended, leaving Lisa alone with her thoughts. She looked at the microscopic images again, searching for some weakness in the parasite structure. There had to be something she was missing. Captain Rodriguez had been listening to the conversation. "Doctor, what if we can't find a cure? What if the only way to stop this is to... Don't," Lisa said sharply. "Don't even think about it. We're not going to give up on those people. Every infected being is someone's family member, someone's friend. They deserve better than being burned alive from orbit." Mark pulled up another screen showing the infection patterns. "Doctor, look at this. The parasites aren't random in how they spread. They're targeting specific types of beings first." Lisa studied the data. "You're right. They go after the leaders first, politicians, military commanders, scientists. Then they move to communication specialists and transportation workers. It's like they have a plan," Carlos said. "Like they know exactly how galactic society works. Realization hit Lisa like lightning. It's because they do know. These aren't just parasites, they're weapons. Someone or something created them to destroy galactic civilization from the inside. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the research station. The emergency communication system activated, and Captain Jake Martinez's voice filled the laboratory. All stations, this is Captain Martinez aboard the UES Horizon. We're receiving distress calls from the core worlds. The infection has reached Nexus Prime. I repeat, the parasites have reached the Galactic Council headquarters. Lisa stared at the speaker in horror. Nexus Prime was the center of galactic government, home to billions of beings from hundreds of species. If the infection was there, it meant the parasites had somehow jumped across thousands of light years in a matter of days. How is that possible? Mark whispered. Our quarantine procedures should have prevented. The answer came in. Another transmission, this one from the council chambers themselves. The image was shaky and filled with static. They could see council speaker Vexprim, the reptilian leader of the government, standing behind his podium. Citizens of the galaxy, Vexprim said, his voice strangely calm, I am pleased to announce that we have found a solution to the parasite crisis. Our new friends have shown us a better way to live, a way without conflict or suffering. Behind him, other council members stood in perfect formation, all smiling the same distant smile that Lisa had seen on the infected millions. Their eyes had the same hungry, empty look. Soon, Vexprim continued, all worlds will join us in this perfect harmony. Resistance is unnecessary. Welcome your new friends with open arms. The transmission cut to static, leaving the laboratorians stunned. Silence. The Galactic Council, the government that ruled over thousands of worlds and trillions of beings, had been completely taken over by the parasites. Lisa looked at her colleagues and saw her own fear reflected in their faces. The infection had not just spread to the core worlds, it had taken control of the entire galactic government. Now the parasites had access to military fleets, communication networks, and transportation systems across the galaxy. God help us all, Carlos whispered. Outside the laboratory windows, space looked the same as always, peaceful stars scattered across the darkness, but Lisa knew that appearance was a lie. Somewhere in that darkness, infected fleets were already moving toward every uninfected world in the galaxy. The war for the survival of all free-thinking beings had begun. The enemy was already inside the gates. The bioweapon attack on the Galactic Council changed everything in a matter of hours. Dr. Lisa Chen watched the chaos unfold from her laboratory aboard New Geneva, her hands shaking as she tried to focus on her research. The screens around her showed reports from across the galaxy, entire fleets going dark, communication networks failing, and worst of all, the infection spreading faster than ever before. Dr. Mark Williams called from his workstation, his voice tight with panic. The new samples from the council attack, the parasites have changed again. They're not just evolving, they're completely different from what we've seen before. Lisa rushed to his station and looked at the microscopic images. Her heart sank. The parasites from Nexus Prime were larger, more complex, and they moved with purpose inside their host cells. These were not the simple, thread-like creatures they had been studying for months. How different? She asked, though she feared the answer. They're like a completely new species. These ones can reproduce inside the host's body, creating thousands of offspring in hours. They can also survive outside a host for days, maybe weeks. Doctor, I think these are the original parasites. Everything we've been fighting was just the weakened version. Implications hit Lisa like a physical blow. The parasites could survive outside their hosts. They could spread through air systems, water supplies, even on clothing or equipment. Quarantine procedures would be useless. Commander Alex Turner burst into the laboratory, his security uniform torn and his face grim. Dr. Chen, we have a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple fleets heading toward New Geneva. They'll be here in 6 hours. Which fleets? Lisa asked, though she already knew the answer. Zilani, Reptilian, Million, even some human ships. They're all infected, and they're all coming for us. Lisa felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on her. New Geneva was the last major research facility still free from infection. If it fell, any hope of finding a cure would die with it. She looked at her research data, months of work that still hadn't produced a solution. Commander, how long can we hold them off? Turner's expression was grim. With our current defenses, maybe an hour after they arrive. These aren't random attacks, they're coordinated. The infected are using military tactics, probably from the minds of infected commanders. An emergency transmission came through the communication system. Captain Jake Martinez appeared on the main screen, his face showing the strain of the past few weeks. Behind him, the bridge of the UES horizon looked like a military command center, rather than an exploration vessel. Dr. Chen, we just received intelligence from the Zalani homeworld. Ambassador Kethvar managed to send a message before his fleet was completely taken over. Lisa felt her stomach drop. Kethvar had been one of the few alien leaders who truly understood the threat the parasites posed. If he was infected now? What did he say? She asked. Jake's expression grew darker. The parasites aren't just taking over random worlds. They have a specific target, Earth. They're using the combined fleets of the infected species to launch a direct assault on our homeworld. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Earth was humanity's heart, home to over 15 billion people. If the parasites took Earth, they would have access to humanity's entire population, and humans were the only species. Still effectively fighting the infection, Mark stood up from his workstation, his face pale. Doctor, I need to tell you something. I've been analyzing the parasite's genetic structure, and I found something terrible. What is it? I know why they're so focused on taking over leaders and military commanders. The parasites don't just control their hosts, they can access their memories, their knowledge, their skills. Every infected being makes the entire hive mind smarter and more dangerous. Lisa understood immediately. They're not just spreading for the sake of infection. They're collecting intelligence, learning how each species thinks and fights. Exactly. And if they take Earth, they'll have access to everything humans know about warfare, strategy, and survival. They'll become unstoppable. Commander Turner activated his personal communicator. All security teams to battle stations. Prepare for siege protocols. We're going to hold this station as long as possible. Lisa returned to her research with desperate urgency. She had to find a cure, not just for the infected beings, but for the entire galaxy. The answer was somewhere in the data, she was sure. Of it, the parasites had to have a weakness. Hours passed as she worked, barely aware of the preparations going on around her. Turner's security teams were setting up defensive positions throughout the station. Medical staff were preparing to treat wounded. Engineers were routing all available power to weapons and shields. Finally, Lisa made a breakthrough. She was studying the cellular structure of the newest parasites when she noticed something odd. The parasites from different species were slightly different from each other, adapted to their specific hosts. But they all shared one common element, a protein chain that seemed to serve as their communication system. Mark, she called excitedly, look at this. The parasites use this protein to talk to each other, to coordinate their actions. If we could disrupt this protein. Mark rushed over and examined her findings. It could break their connection too. The hive mind. But doctor, disrupting this protein would be fatal to the parasites. And to their hosts? Lisa finished quietly. The horrible truth settled over the laboratory like a dark cloud. Lisa had found the cure, but using it would kill every infected being in the galaxy. Millions of innocent people, including children, would die to save billions of others. Before she could fully process the implications, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Commander Turner's voice came over the intercom. All personnel, this is Commander Turner. The infected fleets have arrived. We are under attack. Through the laboratory windows, Lisa could see the approaching ships. Hundreds of vessels from dozens of species, all moving in perfect formation. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. The combined military might of the galaxy, all controlled by parasites that wanted to destroy everything free beings had built. The first weapons fire lit. up the darkness of space. New Geneva's shields flared as energy beams struck them. The station shook under the impact, and Lisa had to grab her desk to keep from falling. Dr. Turner's voice came through the intercom again. "We need that cure now. We can't hold them off much longer." Lisa looked at her research data, then at Mark and the other scientists in the laboratory. They all understood what she had discovered. The cure existed, but using it would make humanity responsible for the deaths of millions of innocent beings. "I have it," she said into the communicator. "But Commander, you need to understand this cure will kill everyone who's infected. There's no way to save the hosts."
Ow.
The station shook again as more weapons fire struck the shields. Through the communication system, Lisa could hear the sounds of battle, Turner's security teams, fighting infected boarding parties that had somehow made it through the station's defenses. Dr. Chen Turner's voice was strained. "If we don't use the cure, everyone dies anyway. The infected aren't going to show us mercy. They can't. The parasites won't let them." Lisa closed her eyes and thought about all the infected beings she had tried to save. The million children, with their terrified eyes, Ambassador Kethfar fighting against the parasite in his own mind, the countless innocent people who had been turned into weapons against their will. She opened her eyes, began transferring her research data to the station's communication system. The cure would be transmitted to every human ship in the galaxy, along with instructions for how to manufacture and deploy it. "I'm sending the cure now," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "God, forgive us all for what we're about to do." The transmission went out across the galaxy, carrying with it both salvation and damnation. In a few hours, humanity would have the power to end the parasite threat forever. They would also have the responsibility for genocide on a scale never before seen. The age of human mercy was about to end, replaced by something far more terrible, but necessary for survival. Admiral Susan Brooks stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Retribution, staring at the deployment orders on her screen. Operation Cleansing Fire was about to begin, and she would be responsible for the deaths of millions of innocent beings. Her hands trembled slightly as she prepared to give the command that would change humanity forever. "Admiral," her communications officer called out, "all fleet commanders are ready and waiting for your orders. Every infected world is surrounded. The cure is loaded into our delivery systems." Susan looked at the tactical display showing the positions of human ships across the galaxy. Hundreds of vessels surrounded 12 infected worlds, each carrying enough weaponized cure to kill every parasite and host on the planet below. It was the most coordinated military operation in human history, and its purpose was genocide. "Admiral." Brooks came a voice from the communication system. It was Captain Jake Martinez, now commanding a strike force near the Zalani homeworld. "I need to report something before we begin. We're receiving transmissions from the surface. Some of the infected are fighting back against the parasites." Susan felt a moment of hope, quickly crushed by reality. How many? Not enough. Maybe 1 in 1,000 can resist long enough to send a message. The rest are completely controlled. On another screen, Colonel Ryan Foster appeared. He was leading the ground assault teams that would secure key locations after the cure was deployed. His face was hard, showing no emotion, but Susan could see the pain in his eyes. "Admiral, my teams are ready to move in once the cure takes effect. But I need to know, are we sure there's no other way?" Susan had asked herself the same question 1,000 times. Dr. Chen confirmed it. "The parasites can only be stopped by destroying the protein that connects them to the hive mind. There's no way to kill the parasites without killing their hosts." The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of the ship's engines. Every person there understood what they were about to do. They were about to commit mass murder to save the galaxy from something worse. "Admiral," the tactical officer reported, "we're detecting massive fleet movements from the core worlds. The infected are launching their assault on Earth." Susan's blood turned cold. Earth was humanity's home, defended by only a small fleet. Most of the human military was spread across the galaxy, surrounding infected worlds. If the parasites reached Earth while the cure was being deployed, ... double quotes, "how long until they reach Earth?" she asked. 18 hours, ma'am? But Admiral, if we delay the cure deployment to help defend Earth, the infected worlds will have time to launch. Their own fleets will be fighting on dozens of fronts instead of ending this now. Susan closed her eyes and thought about her daughter living on Earth, about the billions of people who depended on her decision. She thought about the infected, children on the worlds below who would die in the next few minutes. There was no choice that didn't involve massive loss of life. Begin Operation Cleansing Fire, she said, her voice steady despite the breaking of her heart. The order went out across the galaxy. On 12 worlds, human ships released clouds of weaponized cure into the atmosphere. The airborne agent was invisible and odorless, designed to spread quickly through air systems and reach every living being on the planet. Colonel Foster watched from his command ship as the cure spread across the Zilani homeworld. The planet looked peaceful from orbit, its cities glowing in the darkness. In a few minutes, those cities would be filled with the dead. Colonel, his communications officer said, "We're getting a transmission from the surface. It's Ambassador." Kethvar Foster's heart clenched. Kethvar had been a good friend before the infection. Put him through. The screen showed the interior of the Zilani Command Center. Ambassador Kethvar stood in the middle of the room, his reptilian features twisted with pain. Around him, other infected Zilani tried to move toward the communication console, but Kethvar was fighting them off. Colonel Foster, Kethvar said, his voice strained with effort. "I can feel them dying. The parasites are screaming inside my head. I know what you've done, and I know what it means. Ambassador, I'm sorry. We didn't have another choice." Kethvar managed a weak smile. "Do not apologize for doing what must be done. We Zilani understand necessary sacrifice. The parasites showed me their true plan. Earth was just the beginning. They wanted to use our combined fleets to spread across the entire universe." The Zilani warrior's body began to shake as the cure took effect. "Colonel, promise me something. When this is over, remember that we chose to fight back at the end. Remember that we died as ourselves, not as their slaves." The transmission flickered and went dark. Foster stared at the empty screen, knowing that his friend was dead along with everyone else on the planet below. The cure worked quickly, within minutes. Every infected being would be gone. Dr. Lisa Chen monitored the cure's deployment from the bridge of the UES Retribution. Her screen showed biological readings from all 12 worlds, tracking the spread of the airborne agent. The data was exactly what she had predicted, but seeing it happen made her feel sick. Dr. Admiral Brooks said quietly, "How long until?" "We know if it worked. The cure should neutralize all parasites within 10 minutes of exposure. After that, we'll need to scan for any remaining parasite activity." The minutes passed in terrible silence. Around the galaxy, human crews watched their instruments and waited for confirmation that the greatest act of mercy-killing in history had succeeded. Finally, reports began coming in. Captain Martinez's voice came through the communication system first. "Admiral, this is Martinez. Biological scans of the Zilani homeworld show no parasite activity. The cure worked. Everything is ... quiet." More reports followed. The million agricultural worlds were silent. The trading stations were empty. The military outposts showed no signs of life. In less than an hour, humanity had killed more intelligent beings than had died in all the wars in galactic history. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we're getting confirmation from all strike forces. The cure was successful on all infected worlds. Total casualty count is 47 million beings." Admiral Brooks felt the weight of those deaths settle on her shoulders. 47 million people who had been innocent victims killed because it was the only way to stop something worse. "What about Earth?" she asked. "The infected fleets are still approaching, but they've stopped coordinating their attacks. The ships are continuing on their original courses, but they're no longer acting as a unified force." Lisa understood what that meant. The hive mind is broken. Without the parasites on the infected worlds providing coordination, the remaining infected can't work together effectively. Colonel Foster's voice came through the communication system. "Admiral, I'm reading massive power failures on the approaching infected ships. Looks like the parasites are dying even there." Maybe the hive mind connection was so strong that losing the main worlds killed parasites everywhere. Hope flickered in Admiral Brooks' heart. Are you saying we might have stopped all of them? I'm saying the infected fleets are no longer a threat to Earth? We did it, Admiral. We saved the galaxy. Oh. The bridge crew began to cheer, but Admiral Brooks felt no joy. They had won, but the victory had cost them something precious. Humanity had always been known for their mercy, their willingness to help others even at great cost to themselves. Now they would be known as the species that could commit genocide when necessary. Dr. Chen looked at her instruments one final time, confirming that no parasite activity remained anywhere in the galaxy. The threat was over, but she knew that humanity would never be the same. They had learned that sometimes mercy was a luxury they could not afford. The cure had worked perfectly, saving billions of lives by ending millions of others. It was the most successful medical deployment in galactic history and the most terrible thing humanity had ever done. 5 years had passed since the cleansing fire, and the galaxy was a very different place. Admiral Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the U's Guardian, watching a small alien vessel approach human space. The ship belonged to the Karathi, a peaceful species that had never seen war before the parasite crisis. Admiral, his communications officer, reported, "The Karathi ship is requesting permission to enter our territory. They want to establish trade relations." Jake nodded, but his first question revealed how much humanity had changed. Have they been scanned for biological threats? Any signs of parasites, viruses, or unknown organisms? Full biological scan complete. Sir, the ship is clean. No infectious agents detected. The bridge crew went through their security checklist with practiced efficiency. Every alien vessel was treated as a potential threat until proven safe. The days of welcoming unknown species with open arms were over. Dr. Lisa Chen, now director of xenobiological threats, appeared on the main screen from her monitoring station on the edge of human space. Her hair had turned gray in the past 5 years, and her eyes held a hardness that had not been there before. "Admiral Martinez," she said, "I've reviewed the Karathi biological data. They're safe to interact with, but I recommend standard containment protocols. No physical contact, sealed environment suits for all personnel, and immediate quarantine for anyone who boards their ship." Jake remembered when first contact had been about friendship and wonder. Now it was about survival and caution. "Understood, Director. We'll follow Protocol 7. The reformed Galactic Council had been rebuilt from the few surviving government officials who had not been on Nexus Prime during the attack. Ambassador Vex Prime, one of the lucky survivors, now led a much smaller and more careful organization. The new council met on heavily defended stations. With strict biological screening for all members, Jake's personal communicator chimed with an urgent message from council headquarters. Vexaprime's reptilian face appeared on the small screen, looking older and more tired than before. "Admiral Martinez," Vexaprime said, "we have a situation developing in the Outer Rim. A new species called the Zephyrians has been making contact with our border worlds. They're asking questions about the cleansing fire." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The cleansing fire had become legendary throughout the galaxy, but not in the way humanity wanted. Some species saw it as necessary salvation. Others saw it as proof that humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. "What kind of questions?" Jake asked. "I want to know how we made the decision to kill so many innocent beings. They're asking if humans would do the same thing again if faced with a similar threat." The answer was yes, and everyone knew it. Humanity had proven they would sacrifice anything and anyone to protect the galaxy from existential threats. Knowledge made them powerful allies and terrifying enemies, Captain Amy Parker, now commanding her own research vessel, sent a report from the former Million homeworld. The planet was being slowly recolonized by volunteers from surviving Million populations on other worlds, but the new colonists lived under human protection, following strict biological monitoring protocols. Admiral Amy's report said, "The Million survivors are grateful for our protection, but they're also afraid of us. They know we killed their infected families to save them. It's hard to build trust when people remember that you chose to let their loved ones die." This was the reality humanity faced across the galaxy. They were respected, feared, and needed, but they were no longer loved. The species that had once been known for mercy and compassion was now known for making the hard choices that others could not make. Commander Ben Sullivan, now running the Human Defense Academy, trained the next generation of officers. His lessons were very different from the exploration and diplomacy courses that had once been standard. Now human officers learned about threat assessment, biological warfare, and when to choose survival over mercy. Remember Ben told his students? Our job is not to be liked. Our job is to protect the galaxy from threats that could destroy all intelligent life. If that means making enemies, so be it. If that means being feared instead of loved, we accept that burden. The students young, men and women who had grown up hearing stories of the cleansing fire, nodded with understanding. They knew what their species had become and why it was necessary. Jake received another communication. This one from a Zilani ship approaching human space. The new Zilani government had been rebuilt by survivors who had been off-world during the infection. They maintained friendly relations with humanity, but even they treated humans with careful respect. Admiral Martinez, the Zilani captain, said, "We bring greetings from our homeworld. The new colonies are thriving under your protection. We also bring a request from our government." "What kind of request?" "We've detected strange energy readings from an unexplored system near our border. Our scientists believe it might be technology from the species that created the parasites. We request human assistance in investigating this threat." Jake understood the real message. The Zilani were too afraid to investigate alone. They wanted humans to take the risk because humans had proven they would do whatever was necessary to eliminate threats. "We'll send a task force," Jake replied. "Standard protocols. If we find anything dangerous, we'll destroy it immediately." The Zilani captain looked relieved. This was what humanity had become, the galaxy's immune system, the species that would face any threat and eliminate it without hesitation. Dr. Chen's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Admiral, I'm picking up something interesting. From our long-range sensors, the Karathi ship has been broadcasting a message as it travels through our space." "What kind of message?" "It's a recording being sent to other Karathi ships. They're telling their people about their visit to human space. The message includes detailed descriptions of our security protocols, our weapon systems, and our attitudes toward alien species." Jake frowned. "Are they spying on us?" "Oh, Admiral, they're warning their people. The message basically says the humans are not evil, but they are absolutely ruthless. Do not give them any reason to see you as a threat." This was how humanity was seen throughout the galaxy now. Not as monsters, but as something far more frightening, reasonable people, who would commit any atrocity if they believed it was necessary for survival. The Karathi ship completed its visit and departed, carrying with it the same message that every species took away from contact with humans. Be grateful for their protection, be respectful of their power, and never, ever give them reason to see you as a threat. Jake stood on his bridge, looking out at the stars that had once seemed full of wonder and possibility. Now they looked like a battlefield where humanity stood guard against unknown dangers. The galaxy was safer because of what humans had become, but something beautiful had been lost forever. Years later, parents of 100 different species would tell their children the story of the cleansing fire. They would explain how the gentle humans from the death world had been forced to choose between mercy and survival. They would teach their children that humans were not cruel by nature, but became infinitely more dangerous when their compassion was exhausted. The phrase "remember the Krythok" became a warning whispered in alien languages across the galaxy. It meant, do not mistake human kindness for weakness, because when pushed beyond their limits, Deathworlders show no mercy at all. In the ruins of the infected worlds, monuments stood with inscriptions in 1,000 languages. They all said the same thing: here lies mercy. It died so that we might live. And throughout the galaxy, in the safety that humanity's terrible choice had purchased, intelligent life continued to flourish under the watchful eyes of the species that had learned to kill with love in their hearts.